Hey guys, welcome back to another video. If you're new to my channel, hi, my name is Miranda and I teach about anything and everything related to the trucking industry and how to navigate it. So if this is a topic that interests you, feel free to subscribe down below and join our amazing growing community. So let's get right into it. Today I want to make a video dedicated to the trucking market. Now I will be releasing a video update of what is going on in the freight market as of November 2022, but today we're going to focus on the general view of the trucking market and how it flows, dances, moves, choose any verb you want here.
My verb of choice is disappoints.
I'm a strong believer that understanding the movement of the trucking market will help you a lot in several different ways. First of all, it will provide you with the necessary tools so you can actually predict the market with some degree of certainty. Second, you will have a better sense of where in a cycle you are at any given time. And third, and most importantly, it should give you a sense of peace. Kind of, because you'll quickly realize that bad times, just like good times, do not last forever. Ready? Let's go! Now, one quick announcement before we actually start. I am completely aware of the fact that I am ridiculously delayed in responding to your emails, and I promise you guys that I'm going to do the best I can to respond to every single email by the end of this weekend. Okay, market. On the most basic level, of course, the law of supply and demand is at the heart of the trucking market. So let's take a look at supply and demand. If there's a ton of demand from shippers and not enough trucks to cover this demand, rates start going up because this truck takes this load, this truck takes this load, but then there's all of this that is still uncovered. So these shippers, when another truck comes into this market, the shippers will start competing with each other, hiking up rates to get their load moved. On the other hand, when there is an oversupply of trucks and a lack of demand, of course, rates go down. So these trucks covered the loads, but then there are all of these trucks that are still empty and don't have a load. So once a load does come out in this market, the trucks start competing with each other, and the shippers understand that each truck needs a load to move, and if there's one load and a bunch of trucks, they're going to be competing for that one load. So the shipper has the complete freedom to push down the rate and move it for as little money as humanly possible. Now, there's one thing I want to mention. In this industry, supply and demand is extremely fluid and fast changing. And this is partially because it's relatively easy to enter this industry. And what ends up happening is when there are good times, a lot of people do start entering this industry, and because of the oversupply of capacity, rates start going down. This is in part the reason the rates are so low today. In 2021, there was a huge boom in the industry and people saw an opportunity to make money. So everybody started opening trucking companies, getting trucks. And basically what happened is now we have an oversupply of trucks, a lack of demand from shippers because there's not as much freight, and the rates are going down the toilet. Now, of course, there are other factors to consider as well, but in this case, we're just talking about supply and demand. Now, supply and demand is something that you will hear about relatively often in this industry, but what you will not hear as often is the 3 cycles of the trucking market. So let's go ahead and take a look. Cycle 1 is seasonality. Now, this is something most of you probably heard of, and it also happens to be the most stable cycle out of the 3. What is seasonality? Well, it's pretty simple. From January to March is usually the quiet season. Freight volumes are down, and most of the time, so are rates. The holidays are in the rearview mirror. There is really bad weather out there, and basically there's not much to do other than twiddle your thumbs and wait for the next season. Now let's take a look at the quiet season. And what I did was I took dry van, flatbed, and reefer from DAT. We have these different colored lines. This is from 2017 all the way to 2022. I encourage you to take a screenshot because we're going to be moving through this pretty fast. Here is the quiet season. As you can see, this is for the dry van. The rates, 2022 obviously is a weird year. So was 2021, which is in red. But in general, you can see that the rates are not great. They start going down and dipping. Let's take a look at the reefer. Again, this is this portion right here from the blue line to the blue line. And you can see that rates go down. I mean, year after year, the rates go down during the quiet season. For the flatbed, it's pretty much the same. The rates start going down from the beginning of January towards the middle of the quiet season. The next season is the produce season, which happens from April to July. The weather starts warming up. All of a sudden, there are a ton of fruits and veggies to ship out, and the rates usually start going up because there's more freight. And in the spirit of remaining competitive, non-produce shippers also start hiking up their rates. Basically, this is usually a good time in the industry. There's freight to move, there's money to be made, time to work. So let's take a look for the dry van. See, during produce season, which is from the red line to the red line, I hope you guys can see it, there is a peak usually. And this is even for the dry van that does not specialize in moving fruits or vegetables, because it usually does not have any temperature control capabilities. Let's take a look at the reefer. You can see that the reefer, the rates start going up. Usually, even in 2022, the purple line, there was a jump in rates during produce season. Let's take a look at flatbed. Well, flatbed is doing pretty good. I mean, in 2018, 2022, 2021, there is a small peak in rates. Then there is the peak season, which lasts from August to October. And peak season is basically when retailers start stocking up on a lot of stuff to sell during the holidays. So there's a ton of freight moving across the board. So let's take a look at the peak season right here. As you can see, for the dry van, historically, rates start going up during peak because there are a ton of things to move. For the reefer right here, there's also an increase usually in rates. There's a little bit of a slowdown, but then there's usually a jump towards the end of the peak season. And all of this stuff, all of this peak season is done in preparation for the holiday season, which lasts from November to December. This is the time where you can make a ton of money. There are a ton of last minute things that need to be moved to make sure they get to their destinations on time. There's a reduction in capacity because a lot of people want to spend the holidays with their family. So what ends up happening is a perfect storm. Less supply of trucks and more demand from shippers. So the rates will usually go up. As you can see, this is for the dry van. For the reefer, there is always a huge jump. And for the flatbed as well, there is a jump in the holiday season. Now, 2022 is a little bit different. I completely understand it. 2021 and 2022 in general are not normal years. First, we had COVID in 2020, then there was a huge disruption in supply chains in 2021, and now the market is overcorrecting itself in 2022. So it's a little bit of a different cycle right now, but seasonality in general is something you can use to predict what's going to happen next. Then comes the second cycle, the annual procurement or annual bid. Once a year, many shippers will start hunting for carriers. Basically, the shipper will compile a huge list of carriers and send out spreadsheets to those carriers containing things like where does this pick up, where does it deliver, what kind of freight, any details, and then the shipper will wait for the carriers to place their bids on lanes. And finally, we'll end up awarding those lanes to the carriers that place the lowest bid. Why do shippers do this? Well, the whole idea is to protect themselves from the volatility of the spot market. Rates are preset. They don't have to worry about having to negotiate with carriers every single day. Basically, things are much simpler. But there are two things I want you to note about contract rates. Number one, contract rates are heavily influenced by recent movements in the spot market. For example, if spot market rates are down in the dump like they are right now, there will be a downward pressure on contract rates as well. So let's take a look at this. This is the Coyote curve graph. We have the contract rates in blue and the spot market rates in green. So if you look, spot market rates peaked right here, and contract rates did as well a little bit later. Then the rates went down right here on the spot market. And shortly after, so did the contract rates. So what you can see here is first the spot market does its thing, the rates go up, down, and the contract rates follow shortly after. The second thing I want you to remember is contract rates are also sometimes called paper rates because these are non-binding, meaning that carriers can still reject those rates, and those are called tender rejections. When a preferred carrier rejects a contract rate, the shipper is forced to find an alternative carrier. And what that means is that the rate of the load starts going up. So to make it simple, when there is a rejection of a contract rate, that load ends up on our load board that we all love and use. And the load ends up on the spot market. That is why tender rejections can be very telling when deciding whether the market is in the carrier's favor or in the shipper's favor. If the rate of rejection is high, that means that more loads are going onto that spot market, and that means that the rates are increasing. If the tender rejection rate is low, then less loads are trickling down to the spot market, so there's less freight, and the rates start decreasing. So let's take a look at the FreightWaves trucking tender rejection index right here. So in December of 2021, the rejection rate was 22.38. In July, it was 8.09. Now it's 4.28. So you can see as tender rejections fell, meaning that contract carriers are accepting those rates, nothing is trickling down to the load board, the rates on the spot market start to fall as well. In December, when there was a ton of money to be made on the spot market, the tender rejection rate was pretty high, meaning that contract carriers were saying, no, I'm not going to move this load, and that load ended up on the spot market. The final and most unstable cycle is the market capacity cycle. Now, there are two types of markets, right? In general, there's the inflationary market and then there's the deflationary market. Inflationary markets right here is when there is more demand than there is capacity and spot rates start increasing and surpassing contract rates. A deflationary market is the exact opposite. This is when the spot rates start decreasing. Basically, there is more supply than demand, while contract rates continue to rise for a couple more months because of the inflationary peak. As you remember, contract rates, they follow the spot market, but they are a little bit delayed. Once you're in a deflationary market, that means that contract rates will soon be deflationary as well, but not right away. Eventually, what happens though is as the market continues deflating and hits kind of rock bottom, contract rates will also start falling. And that is when capacity, meaning all of those trucks, start leaving the market. So let me show you something right here. This is the Q4 2022 forecast by Coyote Curve. I adore them. I highly recommend that you start reading the Coyote Curve. I absolutely love them. It makes sense. So this is what we're looking at right here. We have the contract rates in blue. We have the spot rates in green. As you can see, I'm going to remind you, the spot rates go first, right? If there's a peak in spot rates, shortly after there will be a peak in contract rates as well, but the contract rates are always delayed. But what you can see from here is the movement is like this, meaning that the market will never go up forever. At some point, there is going to be a deflation of the market. But after every deflation, there is an inflation. Why does this happen? So let's take a look from right here. So at these times, a ton of carriers left the market, which means that there was not as much capacity anymore. There was not as much of a supply of trucks. As they left, the law of supply and demand states that the less supply of trucks there is, the more demand from the shippers, rates start going up. So they started going up the rates, and people seeing that the rates are going up, they started entering the market. So now there was an oversupply of trucks right here and right here. Now, once there's an oversupply of trucks and the demand is not as high, guess what? The rates start going down. And this is the cycle that has always been there. People rush into a good market, they oversaturate the market, the rates start going down. Once the rates go down, people realize that, hey, I'm not making any money or I'm losing money. They leave the market, the rates start going up. And this is a constant cycle. So there's always going to be an inflation, a peak, and then a deflation. And it will continue going like this. So right now, for example, we are somewhere right here. right? We are really in a big deflationary market. So once it hits rock bottom and capacity starts leaving, guess what? We'll have an inflationary market. So this is what I mean. Knowing the cycles of the market will help you avoid any panic. You will realize that this is a normal movement of the market. Of course, there are abnormal external factors in 2022, just like there were in 2021, but in general, this is the movement of the market. It goes down, it goes up, it goes down. It's like a wave. So in summary, there are 4 things you need to consider when examining the current market. Number 1, what does the supply and demand look like? To figure that out is pretty easy. Just go to your load board and look at how many trucks are posted versus how many loads are posted. While this will not give you an exact picture of supply and demand, it will give you an idea of what the levels look like. Number 2, what month is it? Is it a historically quiet period or is it the peak season? Number 3, what do contract rates look like? Is there an increase or a decrease in tender rejections? Number 4, what part of the cycle are you in right now when considering the market capacity? Once you figure those things out, you have an understanding of your position, your negotiating power, and you have an understanding of what to potentially expect in the near future. Of course, I understand that this is just the bare bones, the foundation of the trucking market. And there's so many other factors that will have an effect, but this foundation is really important to understand. Anyway, guys, I know I talked your ear off today. We were at the board for the most of the video, but I hope that this video was helpful. I hope that you learned something new that you can apply to your operations. And other than that, I will see you guys in the next video.